welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is David Okon. Thank you so much for your help and also subscribing to my YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, click like, click notification bell, and watch the video, share it with family and friends. We are talking in the United Kingdom about work. If you work for a living, you will get paid. And watch this video and the rest of the other video in the series. If you haven't done so, you can also visit websites in the United Kingdom, gov.uk, and all the other websites I've mentioned in this video series. And leave a comment below, let me know your ideas, what you're thinking. We are looking at the laws and policy in the United Kingdom, dealing with work, dealing with pay in particular, and looking at wages and the effect of when you're leaving work and you get your last payments in lieu of your work, and other aspects of payments, last wages, salary, money in earn. There's something called money in earn. Leave a comment below if you know what it is. It's something you work. It has to do with more, with informal aspect of money in earn. Is to do with informal aspect of working. You work formally, maybe like a porter or maybe 0-hour contract or something like that. Then you get money in earned. But this, we are trying to examine how these types of payment affect different factors. On this occasion, we are looking at its impact on tax. So I'll stay tuned, continue watching. Thank you so much. And therefore, if you look at last earnings, which will be taxed under the employees and normal tax code, we have codes of tax. If you are knowledgeable about tax, then you know tax code. Or if you're not knowledgeable, then you know tax code exists, and it determines your the kind of tax you experience if you are an employee. So under these rules, under this normal tax code, even if you are paid in arrears, sometimes you get paid immediately, sometimes you get paid in arrears. But in this case, we are trying to determine different aspects of payments as they affect taxation. We're talking about last pay when you're leaving employment. If pay, for example, in lieu of notice, and some payment given when you are supposed to get a notice of that pay. We have discussed these elements, but going forward we will probably be repeating them. Watch this video and the rest of the video. Stay tuned. Thank you so much for your support. And the effect of pay in lieu of notice on income support and job seekers allowance. So we mentioned this already. We will be mentioning it again. We're looking at taxation also. So if a claimant was in full-time or part-time work that ended before the first day of their entitlement to income support and income-based job seekers allowance, JSA, or contribution-based JSA, are paid in lieu of notice that they are paid in or is due to be paid from the this work treated as earnings, but it is disregarded and not taken into account at all for these benefits, as we try to discuss in this video and also discussing in the other videos. Stay tuned. So this means the claimants who was in full-time work will not be treated as if they are in full-time work because of pay in lieu of notice, and it will not affect the calculation of their income, these benefits. This is the case even if it is paid in arrears as part of their final payment. If a claimant is in full-time work, they cannot normally get income support or job seekers allowance. Stay tuned, continue watching. If a claimant's part-time work ended on or after the first pay of their entitlement income support, then for income support, pay in lieu of notice is not disregarded. There are some payments which are disregarded, others are not disregarded. Instead, it is taken into account as earnings for a period that begins on a certain date and ends on a certain date. If a claimant's part-time work ended on or after the first day of their entitlement to income-based job seekers allowance or contribution-based job seekers allowance, then for this purpose, benefits pay in lieu of notice is not disregarded. So we're talking about pay in lieu in relation to other payments which are not related to work per se. Watching this video, for it to make more sense, also watch the other video. And what happened in the United Kingdom is of value almost or as much as what happens in another country. We have mentioned this point repeatedly because they are constant all over the element of employment infrastructure, particularly pay, and also we are looking at them in relation to other payments. We are looking at income when we're talking of employment, and we're talking about income when we talk about other payment of money or other non-monetary values which are treated as money directly or indirectly. If a claimant's part-time work ended on or after the first day of their entitlement to income-based job seekers allowance or contribution-based job seekers allowance, for these benefits, pay in lieu of notice is not disregarded. We're talking about pay in lieu, but we're also looking at part-time workers as compared with full-time workers. So if a claimant gets paid in lieu of notice and other types of earnings for overlapping periods from their employer, there are special rules about how to calculate the total period over which their earnings are taken into account. We're talking about calculations here in there, which is part of normal life, and as much as we care to consider if pay in lieu of notice becomes capital, it may affect a claimant's income-based job seekers allowance or income support. These are benefits like we mentioned in the other videos, also mentioning it again here, are part of a type of income payments outside employment. People who do not work for one reason or another, or whether they work and for one reason or another, they are still given certain type of money. Let us look at the effect of pay in lieu of notice on tax. We'll talk about notice on different things, this time on tax. If the client is entitled to notice, either statutory or contractual, then they are entitled to by law to be able to work out their notice unless the contract says otherwise. The contract may say one thing or another, and this impact whether certain things are done or not. So their employer may not want them to work out the notice, and so may offer the payment in lieu of notice provided the employee leaves immediately. We talk about flexibility, whether advantageous or not needs to be assessed before making decisions. Alternatively, the employer may immediately dismiss the employee without notice, and the employee then has to take action against the employer to recover a payment in lieu of notice. So talk about payment in lieu of notice. When there is dispute, there is also a propensity for disputing party to get help of one type or another. In our example, predominantly in terms of employment, we are thinking of tribunals and courts. And so if employment ended and payment in lieu was made before the 6th of April 2018, we're talking about a time frame which here in this example we're talking about the 6th of April 2018. This is to remind us that certain laws came into force, or perhaps also were created, normally coming into force in certain dates. So bringing changes in relation to payment in lieu, which might have been made before the 6th of April, because after the 6th of April, presumably things would have changed. And also, this is the kind of thing you can pay attention when you are reading the law and also trying to understand the policy. So a case in the House of Lords identified 4 different types of pay in lieu of notice. We are talking about pay in lieu of notice. The employer gives proper notice to the employee, tells the employee that they do not have to work their notice, and pays the employee their usual wage for the whole of the notice period in a lump sum. We are talking about notice period. Such a payment constitutes wages, as the lump sum is simply an advance payment of wages, and there is therefore no breach of contract. This type of payment is often called garden leave. Stay tuned, continue watching Leave Account Below if you know what garden leave is. Such advance payments of wages will be taxed in the usual way. We are talking about taxation in employment situation. The contract of employment specifically allow for termination of the employment with a lump sum of pay in lieu as an alternative to the employee having to work out their notice. If the employer dismisses the employee without notice, there would be no breach of contract, provided the employee was paid the pay in lieu. This pay in lieu would not count as wages and would not be damages for breach of contract, but it would be taxable because it is a contractual payment. Talk about contractual payment and also taxable money in relation to employment, especially when employee is leaving work, and employer and employee agree to end the employment on payment of a lump sum in lieu of notice when the contract itself does not provide for pay in lieu of notice. So when you get a notice of one way or another within contract, you get a payment in lieu of the same, and these are actually the dynamics. Such a specific agreement does not form part of the contract, and the lump sum is therefore a termination payment and not any form of payment. So these are specific. Talk about termination payment, termination of employment. Talk about people, employer, employee leaving work and dealing with this situation between themselves and their employer. This type of termination payment is exempt from tax if it is below 30,000. We're talking about 30,000 pounds, which is a condition which determine whether or not they are exempt. The termination payment which you get paid when your employment is terminated by contractual agreement. The most common type of payment in lieu of happens when an employer summarily dismisses an employee, that is, dismisses the employee with no notice. Talk about summary dismissal as compared or contrasted by dismissal following notice. And we're talking also of payment in relation to this situation, and they impact one aspect or another. That is, dismisses the employee with no notice and pays the employee pay in lieu of notice. So you are being terminated as or from work without notice, but you are paid as if you are been given notice, as in pay in lieu of notice, which pay in lieu of notice, which relates to the notice given of termination. If this is done without the employee's agreement, and if there is no term in the contract which allows for a payment in lieu of notice, this type of pay in lieu is damages for breach of contract. We talk about breach of contract when things are done outside agreement, consent not being given by employee, when payments are made in lieu of notice, in situation of summary dismissal. Stay tuned, continue watching, let me know what you think about these scenarios. The employee should argue that it is not wages but a termination payment which is exempt from tax if it is below 30,000. So we talk about the amount paid, which is to be below 30,000, which is exempt from tax under those circumstances. Therefore, such a payment would be considered as not being wages but a termination payment. Wages are when you are paid for work. Termination payment is when you are paid because you are working, you are leaving work. So pay in lieu of notice, which is actually notice in relation to the manner you are being asked to vacate your work, as in termination of your employment, should not be taxable, where a client can show they have been dismissed without proper notice. We're talking about procedural compliance or otherwise, which will impact whether or not the money paid below a certain amount is not subject to taxation, and therefore you have been dismissed without proper notice, and they wanted to work the notice, and there was no term in their contractual contract that allowed the employer to make a payment in place of their working the notice. So talk about working the notice. So HMRC, which is His Majesty Revenue and Customs, HMRC may argue that all payments in lieu of notice are either wages or paid as part of the contract of employment, and therefore taxable even when the contract does not explicitly mention the right to payment in lieu of notice. In practice, HMRC does not always correctly identify what type of pay in lieu of notice has been received. If the contract does not provide for pay in lieu of notice, and the employee and the employer agree the payment of a lump sum at the end of the employment, this agreement will not form part of the contract. Stay tuned, continue watching. So employers often make a payment or pay in lieu of notice net of tax. So if the pay in lieu is of a type which does not attract tax, and the employer has paid the tax to HMRC. The employee should write to their tax office asking for the tax back, as it should not be being deducted. This is wrongful deduction, in other words. So it's important to know at least this information is of right. If the employer has not paid the tax to HMRC, the employee could ask for the tax back from the employer. However, they cannot take court action to reclaim it, owing to the common law principle that the person should not benefit more from compensation than they would have done by continuing to work. That is the kind of information you might or might not be interested to know. You should check that a decision maker does not treat untaxed pay in lieu of notice as having had a tax paid on it when assessing the client for benefits. We talk about benefits, and watch this video, watch the rest of the video, stay tuned, continue watching. Thank you so much.
Some see the original, mighty the god, the magical radical. Hey, representing my magical. Young Jose come million. Amigo wacha, that difta. Kina teach me kenyo amigo kopa. That wacha, kina damage me kenyo amigo wacha. That difta. Kina teach me kenyo amigo kopa. That difta. Kina damage me kenyo. Gangsta de kamele there. Come on, there we are there for the bed. The heaven they say you're my baby. Every day I call you my door, you're my treasure. Baby got your machina, yo. Baby quackana, yo. Baby chop on cola. Baby got your machina. Baby got your quara. You are say bandana. You must say bandana. You must say bandana. Baby got your.
So we are looking at employment when it ended and the payment in lieu was made on or after the 6th of April. In the previous material, we look at the same information when the payment was made on or before the 6th of April. Now we are looking on or after the 6th of April. We talk about employment ending and payment in lieu is being made on a certain date, in this case April 2018. This signifies changes in law, and from the 6th of April 2018, all payments in lieu of notice are subject to tax. These are fundamental changes. There are no discriminating. The employer must identify how much basic pay the employee would have received if they had worked their notice. We talk about working of notice. We talk about basic pay as well. That amount is treated as earnings and is subject to the 30,000 income tax exemption that's available for other termination payment. We talk about termination payment. We also talk about £30,000 limitation for tax exemption purposes. And we talk about changes occurring since April the 6th, 2014 in law, which affect the way pay in lieu is made for purposes of taxation. Basic pay doesn't include overtime, commission, bonuses, termination payments, or benefits in kind. So we'll talk about basic pay, which is the benchmark for one kind or another. And then we'll talk about other elements, including overtime, commission, bonuses, termination payments, or benefits in kind. And therefore, effect of pay in lieu of notice on national insurance contribution. We're talking about national insurance contribution. Stay tuned. Continue watching. We're looking at the effect of pay in lieu of notice on national insurance contribution. Thank you so much. Continue watching. So the client will be entitled to national insurance credits for the period that the pay in lieu covers. We're talking about national insurance credits, and we're talking also of pay in lieu and what it covers and what it doesn't cover. So the period is taken, the period of coverage, which insurance or insurance credit for a certain period, which is covered in relation to the pay in lieu under those circumstances. So thank you so much for your attending. Subscribe to this YouTube channel if you haven't subscribed. Thank you so much. Depending on the type of pay in lieu of notice, different types of pay in lieu of notice are applicable in different scenarios. It may not be liable to have national insurance contributions deducted from it. There are situations where national insurance contribution deductions are not really made in relation to pay in lieu of notice. We are talking about the impact of pay in lieu of notice as they do impact national insurance contribution in terms of liability. If an employer deducts national insurance contributions from the pay in lieu when they should not have done so, the employee could ask the employer to repay the amount involved. Employers from time to time, many times they make mistakes. So you are actually to take responsibility for your situation when you are in a situation of employment. So however, if the employer refuses to pay the employee cannot sue for this money. This is not a suable matter. So if the pay in lieu of notice is paid gross, national insurance contributions do not have to be paid out of it. So we talk about gross payments, and pay in lieu of notice paid gross means it is net. Other elements are not really deducted, so national insurance contributions do not have to be paid out of it for one reason or another. Stay tuned, continue watching, leave a comment below, let me know your thoughts. Let's look at holiday pay and also the effect of accrued holiday pay on income support and job seekers allowance. So we'll talk about income support and job seekers allowance in relation to how they are affected by holiday pays. If a claimant was in full-time or part-time work that ended before the first day of their entitlement to income support, income-based job seekers allowance, JSA, or contribution-based job seekers allowance, holiday pay that is due to be made up to 4 weeks after the claimant's employment ends his earnings, but is disregarded and not taken into account as income at all for these benefits. Stay tuned, continue watching. Thank you so much, and watch this video and the rest of the video for them to make more sense. And this means a claimant who was in full-time work will not be treated as if they are in full-time work because of this holiday pay, and this holiday pay will not affect the calculation of a claimant's income for these benefits. Remember, in the other video we talked about means testing in relation to benefit. Benefit is a fundamental element of payment in the United Kingdom. If you work, if you don't work, if you work or you are on low income, you work part-time, you get top up by the government by assessing your income in terms of these aspects of benefit, which are means tested. If you have maybe a certain type of savings, then you may or may not get this type of benefit. I'll explain this in the other videos also. Continuing, I will be mentioning them from time to time. Leave a comment below and let me know what you need or may not need to know. This is the case even if the holiday pay is paid in arrears as part of their final payment. If a claimant is still in full-time work, they cannot normally get income support or JSA. This is because they will have income. They cannot normally get income support. When you talk about normally, it means there are circumstances where they may get payment. So if the claimant has been suspended from work, holiday pay, that is due to be paid after 4 weeks after their employment ends, is not disregarded. So it is regarded for purposes of benefit, because the more money you have as an income, the more it is considered. We talk about suspension, not really dismissal. That may be the difference. So if you are paid holiday pay and you are suspended, you're not working, you want to claim benefits, your employment, your money paid for holiday, if it is 4 weeks or we talk about up to 4 weeks. This is not disregarded, which means it is regarded, it's taken into account if your benefit is being calculated. I'll be repeating this point going forward, so if you understand it, if you don't, then it's okay, because we can always, if you are interested, that's the main thing. If you value it, if you think it's important, then that's the main thing. Whether you understand it or not, that we can always talk about it in one way or the other, and you can always go and read about them online from the government website. This is if you're in the UK in particular, but also if you are outside the United Kingdom in another country, you can still read about it, or you can go to your government website in whichever country you are, and also get this type of information, because they are important. If a claimant part-time work ends on or after the first day of their entitlement to income support, income-based JSA or contribution-based JSA. JSA is Job Seekers Allowance, which is a type of benefit. After repeating this, the holiday pay, that is due to be paid after 4 weeks after their employment ended. It's not disregarded. So it is regarded, it's taken into account, but it is taken into account as earnings for a period that begins at a certain date and ends on a certain date. Stay tuned, continue watching. Thank you so much. So holiday pay that is due to be made more than 4 weeks after the claimant's employment ends, also which does not count as earnings and is instead taken into account as capital for income support and income based job seekers allowance. Remember, I said these benefits are means tested, which means your income is taken into account, but also your saving or investments are taken into account. So this will be treated as a type of investment. Because of this, if a client has not received some holiday pay they are owed, and you are negotiating on their behalf, you may have a client who is not entitled to have their holiday pay disregarded as earnings if payment of the money owed is delayed until after this 4 weeks period. We talk about 4 weeks period, provided this sum does not take them over the capital limit for income support or income-based job seekers allowance. Talk about limitation of income for purpose of this benefit. They are means stated. I keep repeating this point because they run across income consideration in terms of benefit payments or eligibility for that matter. Holiday pay that is due to be paid more than 4 weeks after the claimant's employment ends is disregarded for contribution-based job seekers allowance. There are two types of job seekers allowance. One is income-based, one is contribution-based. When we talk about contribution, we talk about contribution of national insurance, and that's what they are talking about. So there are different rules. When we talk about income, it means income from work or from gifts. If somebody gives you money on a regular basis, that is considered income. There are different rules about the treatment of holiday pay if the claimant is involved in a trade dispute. Trade dispute is actually things to do with trade unions maybe strikes or demonstrations, something like that. Those are central issues in terms of employment law, rights and obligation. More about the treatment of holiday pay if the claimant is involved in a trade dispute, welfare benefit and tax credits on book. And look at if a claimant has received holiday pay and other types of earnings for overlapping period from their employer. There are special rules about how to calculate the total period over which their earnings are taken into account. If holiday pay becomes capital, it may affect a claimant's income-based job seekers allowance or income support. These are the two types of means-tested benefit. Look at the effect of accrued holiday pay on tax. Talking about accrued holiday pay, and we are talking about taxation, we are talking about the impact of the same one on another. Holiday pay will be taxed under the employee's normal tax code. We talk about tax code, and if you comment below if you know anything about tax code, determine your category as somebody who is being paid either as an employee or anything else, normally employee. Redundancy payments, we are looking at that effect of redundancy payments on income support. The key word is payment, because it can be redundancy payment, it can be something else payment, but how the impact on income support. Income support is a type of money given by the government to the British people. And is the claimant's redundancy payment treated as earnings or capital? These are some moot questions. Statutory redundancy payment counts as a capital. We talk about statutory redundancy payment, which means there are other redundancy payment which could be contractual, but we cannot make presumptions. Statutory simply means there is a sense of obligation, sense of right, without more. A payment in lieu of a statutory redundancy payment counts as capital up to the level of the claimant's entitlement to a statutory redundancy payment. We talk about income. When we talk about all these elements, we have income on our mind, and the level of income, how they affect one aspect of money or another. If the claimant statutory redundancy payment was made, was paid together with their contractual redundancy payment rather than as a separate amount, the amount of their entitlement to a statutory redundancy payment is treated as capital. Talk about contractual payment. Sometimes they are paid together with the statutory redundancy payment, and there are rules governing both when they are being paid one way or the other. If a claimant has received the pay in lieu of notice that they are due or has worked all of their notice period and gets paid for it, their contractual redundancy payment is treated as capital and not earnings. Looking at earning and capital, which I mentioned previously, there's a sensitivity to develop to understand the value of those, the relevance of them in terms of means-tested benefit, which is what we're talking about. Otherwise, the contractual redundancy payment in excess of their statutory redundancy payment counts as the compensation payment. Talk about compensation payment unless it is paid periodically. See also online to find out more. Talk about periodicality of paying payment. In a contractual redundancy, when this is periodically paid, means it's not a lump sum payment. So in a contractual redundancy payment that is paid periodically, rather than as a lump sum, like I said, is treated as income but not earnings, for income support. We'll talk about earnings, we talk about income support, we'll talk about treatment of money or of income in relation to taxation or other forms of deduction. In this case, we are looking at benefit per se. So the claimant may be able to claim income support depending on how much their contractual redundancy payment is more about income support, more about calculating a claimant's income support. Stay tuned, continue watching. Thank you so much. So if a contractual redundancy payment becomes capital, it may affect a claimant's income support. We talk about income support, we talk about contractual redundancy payment becoming capital. Capital is treated here specifically to determine as to whether a claimant may or may not be eligible to income support, which is a type of money, income support being a type of money paid by the government to the British people, which is either means tested, which is means tested, and also being impacted by certain payments. Effect of redundancy payment on job seekers allowance. We looked at income support. Now we are looking at job seekers allowance, and also we are looking at redundancy payment necessarily. Its impact as statutory redundancy payment counts as capital and does not therefore affect contribution-based job seekers allowance, but it may affect income-based job seekers allowance. Contribution-based job seekers allowance contribution relating to when you have been paying national insurance. National insurance means you have been working and in the process paying the tax, which is national insurance contribution, for purposes to qualify you for job seekers allowance, which is contribution based. But it may affect income based. Income based means you probably haven't worked enough to qualify for contribution based. Therefore, you get income based. Income meaning you are being assessed on the basis of your income, whether it is capable of qualifying you for getting job seekers allowance in terms of level. If they are low, if they are medium, if they are high, you can get or not get one thing or another. Like I said, I'll be repeating this for ease of familiarity and also getting to understand the pattern and also the structure of this information. Payment in lieu of statutory redundancy. We talk about the statutory redundancy payment. Statutory means something given according to the law, which is actually a primary legislation from Parliament by the government, which gives a lot more strength and also credence to statutory redundancy, to redundancy payment, which counts as capital up to the level of the claimant's entitlement to a statutory redundancy payment. Talk about statutory redundancy payment and does not therefore affect contribution-based job seekers allowance, like we said, but may affect income-based job seekers allowance if the claimant's statutory redundancy payment is paid together with their contractual redundancy payment rather than as a separate amount. The amount of their entitlement to a statutory redundancy payment is treated as capital and does not therefore affect contribution-based job seekers allowance, but may affect income-based job seekers allowance. These are repeatable points, but there are subtle differences which are specific. Leave a comment below, let me know what you think. Stay tuned, continue watching. So
MVC record.
Bravo, Jesus, on the beat.
So, in the of a contractual redundancy payment in excess of the claimant statutory entitlement is disregarded if the claimant was in full-time or part-time work that ended before the first day of their entitlement to income-based job seekers allowance or contribution-based allowance. It does not affect the calculation of their income for income-based job seekers allowance or the calculation of their earnings for contribution-based job seekers allowance. However, if the claimant was in part-time work that ended on or after the first day of their entitlement to income-based job seekers allowance, contribution based job seeker allowance, their contractual redundancy payment is taken into account as compensation over a certain period and affect their benefit over this period. If a claimant gets a contractual redundancy payment and other types of earnings for overlapping periods from their employer, there are special rules about how to calculate the total period over which their earnings are taken into account. If a claimant is still in full-time work, they cannot get job seekers allowance. This information, I've been repeating them. They are voice of necessity. Periodic sums are paid because of redundancy and compensation for unfair dismissal on grounds of involvement in trade union activities are not counted as part of the claimant's contractual redundancy payment. We'll talk about contractual redundancy payment. However, a periodic sum paid because of a claimant's redundancy has taken the form of early retirement may count as an occupational pension for contribution-based job seekers allowance. Talk about occupational pension. We'll talk about contribution-based job seekers allowance because occupational pension is what you get from your employer in terms of pension when you are of the retirement age. Occasionally people probably can get it early, and if you want to know, you can check this online for purposes of your need. Income-based job seekers allowance, periodic redundancy payments count as income but not earnings. Talk about incomes and earnings, which are fine details. Because income is a broad term, but earning is specific. Is the income you get from employment, from the work you have done to an employer. So if contractual redundancy pay becomes capital, it may affect the claimant's income-based job seekers allowance. So capital affect income-based allowance because in that way it can fulfill the requirement for it being the money being income means tested. So effect of redundancy pay on tax and national insurance. Looking at redundancy payment on tax and national insurance, statutory redundancy. Looking at statutory redundancy payment, which is a payment made in compensation for loss of a job other than wages. Looking at jobs, looking at wages, when you lose one or the other side, it is tax-free up to the first 30,000 pounds over the amount. It is taxable at the claimant's normal tax rate. We talk about normal tax rate and also other types of tax rate, which is accessible up to the first 30,000. And this is a point was not worthy. So you talk about also non-statutory redundancy pay, which will also be tax-free up to 30,000 pounds, provided that the redundancy is a genuine redundancy. This will be the case whether or not the statutory redundancy scheme forms part of the employee's terms and conditions. More about what constitutes a genuine redundancy. You can look for details online. And stay tuned, continue watching. Thank you so much. All redundancy payments are exempt from national insurance contribution, even if they are over 30 years. Talk about all redundancy payments being exempt from national insurance contribution, even if they of 30,000. You don't pay national insurance contribution on this amount, and all redundancy payments. If you are paid redundancy payment, you don't pay national insurance on it. So to determine how much tax, if any, is payable, the redundancy payment will be added to any other payment the client receives as compensation for loss of their jobs. Redundancy payment is a type of money you get from your employer because you lost your job. As in the situation of redundancy, an employee will not have to pay tax on a total of these payments up to 30,000. Anything more, you pay tax on redundancy payment. That's what they're talking about. If the employment has ended because of the employee's illness or disability, then a payment of more than 30,000 may qualify for tax exemption. So being sick pay in terms of saving when you are taxed when your money is more than 30,000. Below, you don't pay tax. So if the payments of compensation for loss of the job total more than 30,000, the employee will pay tax on the amount in excess of 30,000. So if you are 30,000 and maybe 35,000, you pay money on 5,000 pounds instead of 35. Until 6 months, 2011 underpay tax on termination payments above the 30,000 threshold was taxed at the basic rate, currently 20%. From 6th of April 2011, for tax on termination payments above the 30,000 threshold, employees will have to use the OT tax code underpay. The OT code assumes that the employee has no personal allowance and requires the employer to deduct more than the basic rate of tax or for higher earners up to and including an additional 50% rate of tax. The employee will have to claim back any overpayment tax through their next self-assessment tax return. More about self-assessment. Self-assessment often relates to people who are self-employed. If the client has received a redundancy payment from a redundancy payments office, RP, or because their former employer is insolvent, they should check their P800 tax calculation. This is because the PRO and RPO is not an employer and so does not operate a tax code on the payment. HM Revenue and Custom HMRC will deduct basic rate of tax, and the client may pay too much tax on their redundancy payment. If they think they have overpaid tax, they should make a claim for a repayment to HMRC. More about the P800 tax calculation, more about tax refunds. So I'll stop this material here. We will be continuing along this discourse and talking about different elements of taxation, not necessarily taxation pay. We'll talk about payment from work, and also the impact on taxes, or including things like national insurance, and also the impact on benefit, because the values in terms of money which provide elements. This material primarily focus on income, also income maximization. That's where we started our material, and thank you so much for your attending today, for your support this YouTube channel, and also leaving a comment below to encourage discussion. We are a small program, and we are doing very well, and we are on our way to doing the kind of thing we set out to do from the beginning of this program, which began now about 2 years ago, and we are growing steady but slow. We aim to provide the consistency, and we are along the path of talking about this kind of material. But going forward, we will diversify And if you leave a comment and let us know what you're thinking, what you think about this material, what you would like or not like going forward. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye-bye. So, in part of the contractual redundancy payment in excess of the claimant statutory entitlement is disregarded if the claimant was in full-time or part-time work that ended before the first day of their entitlement to income-based job seekers allowance or contribution-based allowance. It does not affect the calculation of their income for income-based job seekers allowance or the calculation of their earnings for contribution-based job seekers allowance. However, if the claimant was in part-time work that ended on or after the first day of their entitlement to income-based job seekers allowance, contribution-based job seeker allowance, their contractual redundancy payment is taken into account as compensation over a certain period and affect their benefit over this period. If a claimant gets a contractual redundancy payment and other titles earnings for overlapping period from their employer, there are special rules about how to calculate the total period over which their earnings are taken into account. If a claimant is still in full-time work, they cannot get job seekers allowance. This information, I've been repeating them. They are voice of necessity. Periodic sums are paid because of redundancy and compensation for unfair dismissal on grounds of involvement in trade union activities are not counted as part of the claimant's contractual redundancy payment. We'll talk about contractual redundancy payment. However, a periodic sum paid because of a claimant's redundancy as taken the form of early retirement may count as an occupational pension for contribution-based job seekers allowance. Talk about occupational pension. We'll talk about contribution-based job seekers.
MVC record.
Tropa, chega,